Okay, let's see what errors we get this time. So we're going to compile our code. So there's still lots of errors, but a lot less than we had before. At one point, our scroll bar here was really small. It was hard to even grab with the mouse. And now we've got some, fair bit of height to it. But as always, we don't care about all the errors. We just care about the first one because we're only going to deal with this one at a time. So, for this error, we're in the Alice in Wonderland text-based adventure game header file. In the member function, auto add items to location, which takes in a location item by reference and multiple number of items. We seem to have the error class object list has no member named add. Okay, so we're going location items dot add an item, and there's no add method. It seems like these all have to do kind of the same thing. Auto remove items from player's inventory, auto add items to player's inventory. These methods are all kind of related. And it seems in all cases we don't have an add method, we don't have a remove method, we don't have an add, we don't have a remove. So, and they're all associated with the game object list. So again, I guess we got to go figure out what's going on with add and remove and why we don't have it. So let's do that, and hopefully we'll be able to solve a few of these errors, 195, 210, 226, 239, and 240, the errors on these lines all at once. So if we go to our code, the error is happening in the Alice in Wonderland text-based adventure game. In the right here. In the add items to, well, this is one of the errors, auto add items to location, and it's saying that we don't have an add method. So again, location items is a game object list, and we're trying to call an add method on game object list, and it's saying we don't have one. Just like down here in auto remove items from player's inventory is a game object list object, and we're trying to call a remove method. And again, according to this, we don't have a remove method. Same thing down here. Inventory is a game object list. We're trying to call the add method. So we keep doing it. Here we're calling add and remove again. And these are game object lists, from list and to list. These are game object list parameters that get passed in. So all these from like 190, starting on 195, line 195, 210, 226, and 239, 240. So far, those issues definitely are all related to the add and remove methods. So 195, 210, 226, 239, 240. So we're going to solve all those right now. So, well, let's go to game object list and see what's going on. Well, yeah, this is one of the shorter classes. It's pretty obvious to see that we have a function called describe game objects, and we have another function called this game object, but we do not have an add or remove method. So why did I do that? So this is why I did it. Game object, I see what I've done. So class game object list is a derived class from std vector. So I've just derived it from the C++ standard class vector from the standard template library, vector of type game object. And again, not that this is an excuse, but well, it is an excuse. I'm going to use it. I'm currently taking courses Comp 444, which is embedded / robotic programming, mostly dealing with the Arduino programming language, which is based off C++, but there's also some Java-esque things in there, like printline and stuff, which is kind of more akin to Java. And so currently, I'm also taking the Java course, Comp 308, at the same time as this. I'm just kind of doing these courses all at the same time to learn programming, and whether that's proper or not. And it's causing some issues because I went to do add and remove, which I think is associated with an array list, a template array list, which is, I think, how I would have implemented this if this was in Java. So I'm using a std vector. So instead of add or remove, to add onto a vector, it's a pushback method. You have to call pushback. and to remove you have to call pop back, I believe. So one thing is I could just change. Well, let's do it that way. Let's go here. One way we could fix these errors is simply every instance of add and remove. I'm just going to get rid of the error 195. So right now we know there's errors on 195, 210, 226, 239, 240, all associated with the same thing. The fact that add and remove aren't defined in the game object list. So if I remove the error on 195 by, instead of saying add, I'm going to remove this, knowing that the game object list is derived from a std vector, I can inherit the pushback function. And see, because it knows this is game object list is derived from the vector, standard vector class, it automatically populated that for me as I started to type. Pushback. So now pushback, that'll work. So if I save this and recompile the code, I will fix presumably that error on 195. This error should go away, and I still have 210 and all the other errors, but this error should go away. So let's clear that. And yeah, 210 is where my error. So I cleared that. I don't like that solution. I was just showing you that would be a quick way to do that solution. Just like remove, if I want to get rid of the error that's currently on 210, the starting error now, I could, instead of remove, I could go pop back. Save this. And again, I'm inheriting. I can call pop back on inventory, which is of type game list object, because game list is derived from the parent class standard vector of game object. So if I do this, now when I compile, I'll get rid of this error 210 up here. So clear this, compile, 210 is gone. Now we're at 226. So we have a way to clear the errors. I don't like that way. That's less intuitive to me. The whole point of object-oriented programming and coding a certain way is to make it seem right. Like right now I'm going locations.pushback. The name pushback isn't really intuitive. I understand it's what they chose for vector, and that's great. And pop back, I know pop's off the stack. I know why they're called push and pop, because it's like dealing with stack. Vectors are stacks, so we push onto the stack, we pop off. But it's less intuitive than add or remove. My game object list, I would like to just be able to say, hey, add something to the list or remove it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back to add and remove, which is going to cause errors. Save that. So now when I call this, I'm going to get those errors back on 195 and 210 or whatever they were. So you can see the errors are back because I've added add and remove back. But we are going to solve it for all of them, and we're going to do it a lot better. We're going to go to our game object list class, and getting a text here. Let me just we're going to go to the game object list class, and we're actually going to add an add method and a remove method. And what we're going to do is we're going to just, when we go to add an add method and we go to define a remove method, we are just going to call the parent classes push back method and pop method. So I'm going to create an add method that calls the vector classes pushback method. But that way I can still then call add. So I'm just creating a method to encapsulate another. So if I do, look, and it's auto-populating things for me. Hey, method to search the game object for an item. No, I might create that, but that's not what I'm going to do right now. Right now I'm going to do a method void add. Oh, look, remove. I'm going to go add game object. Yeah, I want to add a game object. And look, it automatically did it for me. See, these new, the AI incorporated into these IDEs is amazing. It knew when I started type add, I want to take in a game object, because that's the class I'm in. So I'm obviously wanting to add a game object onto my game object list. And I want to pass it by reference. So I want to actually get the actual reference to the game object. That's what the ampersand does. And I'm going to go this arrow operator, push back, and the object. So this says for this object, the game object list, right? This is a pointer to this particular object that this method is going to be called on. and we know this method is being called on, add is going to be called on location item right here, which is a game object list. So we're calling it on this. Add is being called on game object list. And so this refers to that game object list. And then I use the arrow operator to essentially dereference the pointer. So instead of a pointer is just an address, I can't call pushback on pointer. I have to go where that pointer points to, which is the game object list itself, the variable. And then I can call the pushback method on it and push the object that got passed in as the parameter here. I push it onto the vector. So this essentially is doing what I did before when I just called the pushback directly in here, where I just changed the name from add to pushback. That's essentially what this is doing. But I like encapsulating this add method. That way, add is just more intuitive to me when I have a game object list that I've created in another class, and I just say, hey, add something to it, add something. That's just more intuitive to me than pushback, or pop. I want to be able to say add and remove. So I'm going to do the same thing for remove. And look, because I added add, I don't even have to type in void. It knows I want to remove. And look, it does all the work for you. Like, it's really amazing. So it knows I want to remove a game object by reference. Again, I don't want to pass by value. I want to pass by reference. And how do I remove? It's a little more complicated than pushback. Although it could have just done pop. It's decided to be a little more complicated, which is fine. It's, again, taking this pointer, which is this game object that this method would be called on, and I'm pointing, using the arrow operator to point to it to actually get the game object item, and I'm calling erase. So erase is something that takes in, it's a function that takes in, I'm calling the remove method associated with the algorithms header file. So remove is in the standard template library, in the algorithm library. So call remove, which takes in a couple things. It takes in an iterator saying where to start, an iterator saying where to end, and again, we're iterating because this is ultimately a vector under the hood. A game object list, again, is derived from std vector. So we are passing in an iterator to the remove method, starting here, an iterator to where to end. So we want to start here and we want to end here. And what do we want to remove? Object. So we're just looking through the entire list by doing iterator begin and end. We're just iterating through the entire vector, and if we find this object, we're going to remove it. And we want to do that until the end of the list. So you can look up the syntax of this, of how it works in the C++ reference guide, but that's what's happening here. I will have to include the oh, look, I already have the algorithm up here for something else. I'm already doing a transform algorithm, so I already had the algorithm in here, but if I didn't, if this was commented out, besides causing whatever issue it is wherever I'm using transform, it also wouldn't allow this. So if I comment that out and save this, this shouldn't work, I believe. Although it doesn't seem to be giving me a squiggly error, but neither is transform, and I know both of them require it. So another reason actually it might not be causing issues because I'm deriving this class as a child class of std vector, and vector, I've never looked at the reference that closely, but probably has all this stuff already associated with it. So maybe that's why it's not causing an issue. In fact, that's likely, so I probably don't need it here. Which is why we have header guards, in case every person along the way is just including stuff. So yeah, this is one way to do it. I think this could be done easier. I'm just going to comment this out for a second. I think this would work just as fine if I did this arrow operator and called the push or the pop back method, and did this pop back. I don't have to pass in any argument. It just pops off the last thing off of the oh, that's why it's not working. Never mind. As I'm saying this, I just realized pop back pops off the last thing in the vector, which is not necessarily where this object is. That's why we didn't use pop back and it auto-generated remove. Now I could search through the vector and do it another way, but this actually works fine. So I'm just doing a bunch of talking for nothing, but this is what I did. So now we've went in here, I've created an add and remove method, or the computer has for that matter, the AI, that the add method just encapsulates the pushback method to push onto the vector, and it don't care, it just pushes onto the end. And the remove method is a little more complicated, but it calls the erase function, which on a vector, which ultimately erases a particular object. And I use the remove algorithm and iterators and stuff to find that thing. So I've encapsulated everything. So I save that, and now I haven't had to change add or remove in my code. I've kept the names add and remove. I haven't changed them for push back or pop back. I've just done this, left them like that, and I should get rid of all these errors. So hopefully this will get rid of the error 195, 210, 226, 239, and 240. And if there was any other ones associated with add and remove, which I don't see off the top. So, but it definitely will get rid of these. Let's try. Recompile. Still errors, but let's see if we get those ones. And those ones are gone. Now our error starts at 259 with player get location, which we'll talk about in the next video.